Welcome to the E-commerce Badassery podcast, the place for scrappy entrepreneurs who want to learn actionable steps and strategies to grow the traffic, sales, and profit in your e-commerce business. I'm your host, Jessica Totillo-Coster, a 20-year retail veteran and former brick-and-mortar boutique owner who spent 3 years as the only employee of a 7-figure online store. That shit was crazy. I know exactly how it feels to do all the things, and I'm sharing everything I learned the hard way so you don't have to. I may have started this business by accident, but supporting badass bosses like you lights me the fuck up, and I am so stoked to see you grow. Are you ready, babe? Let's roll. Welcome back to the E-commerce Badassery podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Totillo-Coster. A couple of months ago, I was on the Proof to Product podcast with Katie Hunt, breaking down the results of her 2025 State of the Product Industry survey. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, don't worry. Today's episode stands on its own. But if you want to nerd out on even more data, I'll stick a link in the show notes where you can take a listen to the full episode. While we talked about a lot of different aspects of running a product-based business, and we were able to come away with a lot of insights about how business owners are feeling right now, there was one stat that really stood out in our conversation. 25% of survey respondents said they were juggling 6 or more revenue streams. And that's not just selling the same product on a different platform, but truly different revenue streams. That's down significantly from last year, which is progress. But when we look deeper, those 6+ streams were often being used by more seasoned businesses. And that makes sense and is to be expected. But it was also those seasoned businesses who reported they were starting to see a slow decline in sales. Naturally, that raised a huge question for me. And I really wanted to dive into my thoughts around this topic with you. Before we get into that, though, let's take a listen to the original clip so you have the full context of our conversation.
So we asked folks, how do you make your money? And they checked all that applied. Like they went through the list and checked everything. And then I was able to dig into some of the numbers. And selling wholesale was at about 87%-ish, which was up from 79 last year. 99% of respondents say they're selling some aspect of retail, whether it's online, in person, whatever it might be. But 25% utilize 6 or more revenue streams. And I was pleased to see that this was down significantly from 2024. So it went from 87% last year, where people were just completely overloading themselves with multiple streams, down to 25%. Now, our pool of people got smaller this year too. Right. So that it skews more experience. So that could be part of it. But what were your thoughts when you saw that?
At first, I had a similar thought process as you did. Yes, it went down, but there are also fewer new people who filled out the survey. So I think in the beginning of your business, you're just going everywhere to see what sticks. And so that could have contributed to this. But I was happy to see that the higher number of revenue streams you had did skew toward those later businesses. So it seems as if overall people are reining it in, which is good, right? Doing fewer things better. And when you look at these revenue streams, so you've got wholesale online, retail online, in-person markets, and then there is this huge drop-off before you get to custom work, wholesale, in-house, direct sales, brick and mortar, wholesale trade shows. And the revenue of those followed a similar pattern. So fewer people were doing them, but the people that were doing them were making a lot of money from them. And then the same thing happened for licensing as well. And I don't really know anything about that world in terms of licensing your art, but I started to wonder, why are they doing them at all? And is it taking attention away from other things in their business?
That was what my curiosity was with those bottom ones too. Everything from licensing down on this chart. So it's, for those listening, it's licensing, classes, in person or online, semi-custom or name drop, which I've had a lot of people interested in my community recently. People doing coaching and consulting, drop shipping, and then referrals, which was affiliating for other brands or other companies and or having ambassadors, affiliates, influencers promoting your products and services. I thought the same kind of, because I do have a lot of people in my community. And also I should say here, I know you shared with your community and others in my peer group shared with their product folks, but this also could just have something to do with it's our proof to product survey. And there is a chunk of people that are wanting to do more licensing within our community. So like the data points do skew based on who's completing this, of course, and who's marketing and telling people to fill it out. But I agree with you. I was looking at this going like almost all of the top ones, I guess Custom Work's the only exception. All of them are some portion of either wholesale or direct to consumer. And I did parse it out by different methods just because there are some people doing all of them and there's some people doing just one or two of them. And I thought it would be helpful to see the detail. But I agree with you. It makes me think, are we spreading ourselves too thin still? Are there things that we should be pulling back on? Now, obviously, diversification is important if something were to just collapse. But at the same time, I think that also really lends itself to the stage of business someone is in. And we talked about this a little bit last year when we did this podcast of the younger brands who are doing too much kind of sink themselves a little bit because what you waters grows. And if you're trying to water everything, you're not really doing any of it. Whereas the more experienced brands, they can build more methodically. They might get D2C rolling pretty well, and then they layer in wholesale, and then they layer in something else, but they tend to have a stronger infrastructure to make that happen too. They have more team and cash flow and all that.
And actually, you did break down the revenue channels by the years in business. So the people who have been in business for 1 and 2 years, they are most commonly retail online, and then they do a little bit of wholesale. When you get up to the 10 to 14 and 15 plus years, that's when you see them really start to branch out. But what I thought was interesting is the 10 to 14 group and the 15 plus group both said that they saw in 2025 that sales were slowly declining. And so what I'm wondering is there expansion in sales channels a reaction or the cause of that decline?
Oh, interesting.
Right? So did they start thinking, ooh, sales are declining. Let me try licensing. Let me try doing workshops. Let me try and do this thing. Let me try and do that thing. And they were thinking that they needed to diversify. Or was it, hey, all of these things are running really smooth in my business. Let me go try something new now. But then it ended up taking their attention away, and that's what caused the decline. So we don't really have insight into that.
That's a curious question, though, because I would imagine it's both. I would imagine some of it is strategic building, and I would say some of it is maybe panic building of crap, things aren't working, and let me try something else.
Yeah. And look, there's always a time and a place to try something new. And you and I have talked about this. And I think we talked about it actually on last year's survey specific episode. But I would be curious, or curious isn't the right word. For those of you listening, if you fall into this segment of people that we're talking about, where you've been in business a long time, you started trying some new things, if it's not working, it is okay to let it go, no matter how much time, energy, and effort you invested into it.
Yes. Do not let the opportunity cost of holding. So opportunity cost, for those listening, if you're not familiar, it's like that we hold on to something just because we've always done it, or we've already sunken in time, energy, and effort. So we hold on to it because we're like, we can't give this up. I've spent 3 years trying to build this. And yes, it's making some money, but it's not enough money. And so we keep doing it, even though it doesn't serve us. And so, yes, to what you're saying about it's okay to let go of something. Yeah. I actually, just to give a little personal example here, I closed my mastermind for a while in the middle of COVID. It was profitable. People loved it. People were so sad that I was closing it. And I told folks, I'm like, for personal reasons, I need to take a pause on this. And I remember telling some of my peers, I'm going to pause this for a while. And they were like, what are you doing? Like, it's a profitable revenue channel. I'm like, no, it's not working for me right now. Yes, it's working for the business, but it wasn't working for me personally. And so I know that's a little bit of a tangent, but the same is true if it's not working in your business. If you're putting a ton of time and energy and effort into something and you're not seeing the financial rewards that you need to see to keep it going, it's okay to say, you know what, we're changing gears. It's okay to change your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And usually the example that I use, because I know we've all done this, except for maybe people who are married to their high school sweethearts, but we've all stayed in that relationship for way too long because we felt like, oh, I've already put so much into it, right? But once you let go of it, you have this brand new focus and your life just becomes so much better. And the same is going to be true here. When you give yourself permission to let go of this thing that isn't working and isn't supporting itself, that gives you the capacity to focus on other things. And look, you have to give things a fair shot. And I don't know how long these people have been doing the thing. Maybe it's brand new, but it was just an interesting observation.
Yeah, it for sure was. And I think too, in that one chart, and you all see it when you look at the report, but there's a clear drop off. It goes from strong revenue drivers to not strong.
Since we recorded that conversation, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. This is a struggle I see play out all the time with my clients and students, and it doesn't matter which direction we're talking about. Like we said in the clip, we don't know if the expansion in revenue streams was the cause or a reaction to the decline in sales. But it's a pattern that shows up for so many entrepreneurs, and we have to talk about it. No matter what motivated you to diversify in the first place, the outcome is often the same. You end up overwhelmed and stressed out. That's not to say that diversification is always bad. Of course it's not. You often have to diversify to grow. But what I want to dive into a bit deeper for today is to help you figure out when and if diversification is right for you right now, or whenever it is you're thinking about it. Let me say this loud and clear. Adding more revenue streams does not automatically make you more money. I know it feels counterintuitive. We're taught to diversify, to not put all of our eggs in one basket. And yes, there are times when expansion makes sense. But here's the catch. If your core business model isn't profitable and repeatable, adding more layers is not going to fix that. It just spreads your time, money, and focus thinner. If you're struggling to spin one plate, how are you going to spin 5? And this is especially true for solopreneurs and small teams because every revenue stream requires its own set of marketing, messaging, operations, customer service, inventory, or delivery systems. It's not just another offer, it's another business model. So how do you know the difference between smart strategic expansion and reactive expansion? The truth is there's a fine line between them. And often the exact same tactic, say subscription boxes, digital products, art licensing, influencer collabs, could be brilliant or a total distraction. And it all depends on why you're doing it and how you implement it. So let's talk about some of the most common ways I see business owners get tripped up. You saw someone else make bank, and now you're questioning your entire business model. For example, you run a product-based business and things have plateaued a bit. Then you see someone on Instagram say they made $87,000 selling a digital planner. You start second-guessing if you should even be running a product-based business, and you think, maybe I should start a digital product business instead. So you start brainstorming courses, printables, and passive income ideas. But your audience, they're not the same customer for these new digital products. Remember, that person's $87,000 weekend didn't come out of nowhere. It was likely built on years of audience growth, list building, and digital funnel optimization. And that might not even be the kind of business you want to run. At the end of it, all you've done is distract yourself from building on the momentum you already created in your product-based business, and now you're even further behind than you were before. On the flip side of that, let's pretend you're a yarn store owner who sells custom patterns and curated kits with just the right amount of yarn that they need for the project. While the majority of your customers are intermediate knitters, you have a growing audience of newbies who are just getting started in their journey. You film a short beginner knitting course that shows them how to use your best-selling patterns, turning it into a value add that drives more kit sales and creates a new group of confident knitters who are excited to keep shopping with you. The next common mistake, you let a handful of requests derail your product strategy. Let's pretend you sell handbags. Business is steady. And a few people start asking if you make wallets. Instead of validating the idea or designing a cohesive product, you rush to add a few styles to your site. In the end, it underperforms, you're stuck with inventory you can't move, and you put so much energy into launching this new product line that your regular sales started to decline. But what if, instead of getting a wallet to market as quickly as possible, you mock up a few design concepts and gauge interest through a customer poll? You take the top 2 winners and build a pre-launch campaign, collecting money before you have to buy your inventory. You know exactly which styles and colors your customers are willing to pay for, and you've already funded your first production run. Now you can use those profits to invest in the next batch, and you can rinse and repeat that same process with every new product you're thinking of launching. You forget to run the numbers and make sure that new bundle or product you want to create is actually going to be profitable. Sometimes we panic when sales dip and we decide, let's put together a gift box just so we have something new to talk about. You don't really have the right packaging and you end up underestimating the additional shipping costs and hassle to make it presentable. At the end of the day, you did a whole bunch of extra work to actually make less money than if you just continue to sell them separately. But what if you took a mathematical approach to this? You notice your customers tend to buy 3 units per order with an AOV of $24. You decide to bundle 5 of your best sellers with a bonus item, wrapped up beautifully in branded packaging, and you sell it for $40. With your existing 400 orders per month and a cost of goods of $2.50 per unit, if just 15% of your existing customers buy the bundle instead of the individual units, that's an extra $960 in revenue and $400 in profit every month, even after your increased packaging and shipping fees. Lastly, you're always trying to keep up with the Joneses. You're hanging out with a bunch of other product-based business owners in masterminds and group programs, and they're all talking about wholesale on fair, influencer gifting, and blowing up on TikTok Shop. You hate filming video, influencers don't really align with your brand, you have no influencer connections, and you've never really had luck with marketplaces in the past, but you do it all anyway. Upload listings, start DMing creators, posting content on TikTok because it feels like everyone else is ahead of you and you don't want to get left behind. You waste weeks of your life and see no material difference in your bottom line and end up with almost zero ROI. What if instead you took a deep dive into your existing data and customer behavior to uncover details like the fact that you do really well with repeat purchases? So instead of trying all of these new shiny objects, you double down on your retention efforts, build out and optimize your email automations, start a rewards program, and decide to test wholesale after researching whether or not your pricing and margins are sustainable there. In this scenario, you're doubling down on what already works and then approaching expansion with intention instead of FOMO. So what's the takeaway here? Expansion is not the enemy. Please don't get me wrong. But doing it out of fear, comparison, or boredom, that's what drains your energy and stalls your growth. Strategic expansion is validated by customer demand, timed with capacity and support internally, built on the foundations of what's already working in your business, and sustainable from a numbers and operations perspective. Reactive expansion is fueled by fear or panic. It's built on other people's blueprints. It's launched without clarity, capacity, or demand. And it's usually a distraction from what's already making you money. So when you're trying to decide the next move in your business, ask yourself, am I building toward my vision or running from discomfort? And I get it. It's not always going to be super obvious when you should say yes or no to something. You might have to try the thing before you're sure. Sometimes it will fail, and that's okay. The trick is knowing when to let go. And I want to remind you that letting go is a power move. Recently, I had a lounge member reach out to tell me about a huge change she made in her business. She ultimately made a hard but incredibly smart decision. She had a product she launched last year. She really loved it, one that she believed in, and she poured a lot of effort into it. She did all the right things, ran launches for her seasonal collections, ran ads for visibility, made it available to her wholesale partners, sold bundles instead of individual units to increase her AOV. But in the end, her cost of goods were too high, her margins were too tight, and her wholesale partners are pulling back on non-necessity items in the current economic climate. She wasn't seeing the return she needed for it to make sense. So she let it go. She made the conscious decision to stop selling it so she could redirect her focus to other parts of her business. It's not failure. It's business leadership. Sometimes the most strategic thing you can do is walk away from a product, a channel, or an idea that isn't serving you, even if it made you money once, even if you already sunk time and energy into it. That's called opportunity cost, like Katie was talking about in that clip, when sticking with the wrong thing keeps you from finding the right one. If you've ever stayed in a relationship way past its expiration date because you already put so much into it, you know exactly what I mean. Once you finally let go, you create space for better things. The same applies to your business. So here are 3 questions I want you to ask yourself if you're currently juggling multiple revenue streams or considering adding a new one. 1, is this new stream solving a problem my customer actually has, or am I just trying to make money with no clear audience or demand? 2, do I have the capacity to market and manage this new stream consistently without my core business slipping through the cracks, or am I already stretched too thin? 3, would doubling down on what's already working get me further faster? Am I neglecting my main bread and butter in favor of chasing shiny objects? And look, if you've done this before and are now suffering the consequences, no shame, friend. Welcome to the club. My goal now is just to help you avoid making the mistake in the future, keeping you focused, and giving you permission to simplify your business and say no and let go of the things that no longer serve you. You don't have to do all the things. You just have to do the right things at the right time with the right intention. It's easier than it sounds, kind of. So what are your next steps? Well, if you felt called out in this episode, that's a clue that you need to reevaluate where you're putting your energy in your business right now and ask yourself the hard questions. I touched on this a bit in last week's episode when we talked about doing a mid-year check-in, specifically about how sometimes business can get monotonous and boring, but it's usually those monotonous and boring things that will impact your bottom line in a positive way. Go take a listen if you haven't already. My final words for you today are, remember that more isn't always better. Sometimes more is just more. Do less, but better. You know that's my favorite thing, right? And again, if you are currently in this situation, or you've been through this, or you were just on the verge of being in this situation, do not shame yourself. You learn, you move on, and you just keep going. Make sure you check the show notes for the link to Katie's full survey review episode if you haven't heard it yet. Even if you have, I feel so much has already happened in the last couple of months since it aired. It's probably worth a second listen. And that, my friends, is a wrap on this week's episode. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you on the flip side, friend. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you want to learn more about growing your e-commerce business, get started with my free resource library at ecommercebadassery.com/free stuff and get an invite to the Lounge, my e-commerce marketing membership. When you're ready for one-on-one support, apply to work with me at ecommercebadassery.com/apply. Before you go, would you do me a quick favor? Leave a rating and review and tap that follow button. This pushes me up the chart so I can support more scrappy e-commerce entrepreneurs just like you. I'm on a mission to reach as many as I can, and I could really use your help. Thanks so much in advance. Until next time, e-commerce friend, stay badass.